to speak?
Good evening, Chairwoman and members of the board. My name is Nancy O'Neill, and I am an attorney located at 14 Proctor Avenue. And as you know, I represent the applicant and property owner, Zapaj Development, LLC. So we are here tonight as the board at its February 27th hearing, continued this matter so as to seek confirmation from the city solicitor that the plan changes proposed by Zapaj Development meet the standard of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 16, and Rivera Ordinances, Chapter 17, Section 1752-120. So specifically, that is that that specific and material changes occurred in response to the reasons of the ZBA denial, and those changes are between the plans submitted to the ZBA in November 2023 and those submitted to the Planning Board. So that confirmation has since been issued, and I would like to draw your attention to that document, which I have here, if I may. So thank you, Mr. Stringy. So on March 1st, thank you, the city solicitor issued a memorandum to the planning board setting out that the legal standard for the planning board to find that the specific and material changes in the plans was occurred and was not only met but exceeded. So again, the city solicitor in his requested memorandum confirmed that the legal standard for the board to make the requested finding is exceeded. So if you recall here, 6 specific and material changes were proposed. These changes include the addition of screening around the parking area to block views and mitigate noise, the addition of a privacy hedge to block view of the parking area and mitigate noise, the addition of roofline materials to increase visual interest, the installation of soundproofing materials to reduce noise, all of which the city solicitor confirmed responded to the ZBA concerns surrounding impacts on abutting property owners, the inclusion of 2 affordable veterans housing units, and corresponding changes to building entry areas to increase accessibility. As the city solicitor described the affordable veterans units as the most important plan change, which responded to ZBA concerns surrounding affordable housing. So again, such changes exceed the level of changes necessary to support a finding of specific and material changes by the planning board. And for this reason, we again request that the planning board find the specific and material changes occurred. And I would like to reiterate that immediate abutters to the property are in favor of these changes, as was recorded at the last meeting. They are also in favor of the project's return to the ZBA, which is all that a vote by the planning board would allow the project to do. An affirmative vote by the planning board wouldn't ultimately allow these changes to happen. Again, that is a ZBA consideration. We're not asking for an endorsement by the planning board that the changes are good and bad, that the project is good or bad, that the parking provision is good or bad. We're just asking for determination that changes have been made to the project. And we are happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Nancy, did you want to speak through the visual that you brought?
Yes, so this is a visual that you may have seen last time. This is a rendering of the building.
Does anyone have questions for Nancy? Go for it. Yes. Do you have questions for Nancy? Yes. Okay, go right ahead.
Hi. Thank you, Counselor. I believe everything that was listed is now in the motion, especially the 2 veteran units. And I'd like to thank you for that. and I think it's for a good, very good cause. I also did speak to some of the veterans at the Matola Post, and they thought it was a great idea also, which is right down the street from you. The only one thing, and it was not mentioned by anybody on the board, it was mentioned by the developer himself, that he was going to fix the culvert, and I think that was a concern by one of the neighbors. And the only thing I did check on, and along with you, you just can't go work on the culvert, and I think Frank Stringy will testify to that. You have to be a licensed drain layer. So whatever improvements to the culvert that they're talking about, if Frank can kind of direct that with a licensed Revere drain layer to make the repairs for the developer, can we add that in, Counselor?
I'm trying to think procedurally. We can, we're fine with speaking to the city surrounding our work to the culvert. I don't know if a planning board reconsideration would have conditions. That would maybe something that would come at the ZBA stage. So we're happy if this project should be, receive a favorable recommendation from the planning board and then proceed to the ZBA. If that were to be a condition in the ultimate approval of the ZBA, I mean, the chief planner can certainly submit that to the ZBA as a proposed condition of their approval. But as I said, we are happy to do that.
No, you may be absolutely right, but I did check with other planning boards, and I went through the conditions. We went through the case that you mentioned, and the case is an amusing case because it happens in Nantucket, as you well know. And I don't know if you've ever been in Nantucket, but they can go against you for wearing the wrong kind of bathing suit on the beach over there. They're really strict on colors and everything else. So it's a funny island. It's an enjoyable island, but that's where the case came from. And it's a good case. But the one thing that really made this argument strong for changes, when I talked to other people for advice, they did mention the culvert, that the culvert is really a change. So I'd like to add that in to make sure that this thing gets approved and moved along. So if you could add that in. The developer mentioned it. He's the one that brought it up. So he mentioned it last meeting, and he said he tried to do the work and that he was refused. So we're just trying to help the neighbors, make a real change, and then have Frank Stringy of Community Development hopefully kind of oversee, or have them oversee it with the correct language. Is that okay,
Yes.
Counselor?
Well, I can certainly include it in with the planning board's decision, determination, but the work would have to be coordinated with the DPW superintendent
That's fine. And if you
and approved by
want
the
to,
superintendent.
I don't want to bankrupt them. If you want to put an amount what you think it is, if you want to say not to exceed, work that out with the developer. Is that okay? Is that all right?
Make it a suggestion type of thing. That makes sense.
You can include that in the motion, and I'll write it up also.
Okay.
That makes sense.
All right, thank you.
Excellent. Are there other questions?
Nancy, on the drawing you have in front of us, is there a date on the stamp on that rendering?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat that?
On the rendering you provided to us, is there a date on the stamp of that, when that was crafted?
So this stamp is specifically from May 2022, but the images are more recent than that.
Yeah, the reason I ask is I believe the images were prior to the denial, so all those additions were already in the images prior to
Right,
you
this is,
indicating the changes.
I'm sorry, this is the most recent image. You
I
made
know,
the
oh, I know
stamp
that,
wasn't
I know
draft,
that, but
wasn't
it was prior to the denial. So I'm just saying the images, the additions of the screening and the hedges, those were in the image prior to you calling out those being the material changes.
No, the architect didn't update the stamp, but this is the most recent image you can see here. The tree line, which wasn't in the original. The original rendering is in the packet that I submitted, so I don't have a blow-up of that, but you can compare between the original rendering and this one.
Yeah,
But you can see.
No other questions?
Are there any other proponents that would like to speak to this tonight? Are there any opponents that would like to speak to this evening?
Name and address, please, sir?
John Riccio, 24 Franklin Street. Now that the city solicitor has determined that this should go back to the ZBA, is there any way that that's going to change with you? I mean, am I just waiting here for nothing? In other words, you people aren't going to vote against that, right? And not send it back to the ZBA, is that right? Once a city solicitor determines it? Or should we say something about it?
Do you have something to add that would be?
Yeah, I do, but I'd
in
rather keep
opposition?
it confidential until we go before the ZBA. Unless this is actually a real hearing. I mean, I appreciate your comments. He did offer mitigation to fix the culvert, and the drain layers are available. It could be done. You don't have to even add it in. He said he'd do it, and he told me he'd do it. So but I do appreciate that. But my question is, am I gonna go through a whole presentation here and then you people are gonna go against the city solicitor? I don't think so, right?
You want my genuine response?
Yeah.
I'll be truthful with you. I don't know how my
I
peers
don't
will
know
vote.
if you can say, I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
legal when he's asking you that you're going to tell him how we're gonna vote before we get voted.
Okay, all right. I'm just gonna assume that to be true. So in other words, I'm gonna reserve my comments for the ZBA.
Thank you.
Yeah. And my response would have been, if you have opposition, this is the time, but you're welcome to reserve that for ZBA as well.
Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, speak your piece, don't hold it back. if you don't have-
Are there others that would like to speak in opposition? Okay. We can close this side of the hearing and send it to a vote.
So the vote will be on the request for consent to repetition the ZBA relative to material changes proposed for the development of 25 units by Zeppa Development LLC at 344 Salem Street.
Madam Chairperson, I'd like to make a motion to accept the recommendation to pass it back to the ZBA with the conditions that are mentioned on all the documents forthwith.
In just a moment, we'll be able to vote, and that'll be captured.
I'm sorry, could I seek a final reading of the condition? Could I seek a final reading of the condition that will be attached to the approval?
Well, the motion hasn't been made yet for that. I will draft it up, but the way it was recommended is that the applicant, Zeppa Development, will work in coordination with the Superintendent of Public Works for cleaning of the culvert on Salem Street.
Okay, thank you.
No other questions, correct?
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Stamatopoulos. So, a motion by Mr. Abrams that the board determine that specific material changes have been made and demonstrated to remand the plan back to the ZBA for a new public hearing. And that has been seconded. And we'll add to that a recommendation from the planning board, the developer coordinate the cleaning of the adjacent culvert with the DPW superintendent.
Thank you.
On a roll call, Mr. Abrams? Yes. I'm sorry. I hit the wrong one. Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Ms. Simmons Hurling?
Yes.
Mr. Stamatopoulos?
Yes.
Mr. Costanza?
Yes.
and Mr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Voted and so ordered. This matter will be remanded back to the ZBA. No other further business. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yes. Seconded.